The following is my experience with Jiu Jitsu, and I'm here to share my experience, all my personal experience that I have had on the mats. So I started training at the end of 2020, and pretty much my first year of training was in 2021. And this is just a recap of the whole first year of what I have learned and how I navigated in my first year of my Jiu Jitsu journey. So I have a friend who trained 4 years, like on and off 3 or 4 years, and he hasn't trained for a while now. And I kind of asked him, you want to go back to training? And then we went to do our first class together. So he went back to the gym that he started training, and it was my first class. So for the very first class, we learned how to do an armbar, and I was instantly hooked. But in saying that, the very first month, or at least the very first few months after that, was rough. I was getting tapped by everyone. Any white belt who's been training for about a month before me will be tapping me out. So I had a girl who was about 60 kilos, 2 stripes, and she would armbar me, triangle, cross collar, whatever you can think of. And there was nothing I can do about it. For most people, this will be demoralizing, and most people wouldn't even want to come back to train. But for me, it was a life-changing experience. I was almost more hooked onto this combat sport. So I became obsessed. I was actually trying to retain and trying to remember everything. And I can remember I was drawn to the triangle choke because it made sense. I had long legs. And I can remember my very first triangle choke, and I actually got a tap. I don't know how to explain it, but it is probably one of the best feelings you'll ever get. And then by the end of January, I got my very, very first stripe. By the second month in Feb, I was kind of getting the hang of the sport by now. But at the same time, I was still just trying to survive on the mats. Anyone with stripes will be able to kill me. And that wasn't even debatable. I was still getting subbed every couple of minutes. And there's nothing I can do about it. There was one session where I got arm triangled by one blue belt 5 times in one round. Granted, he was a very big guy. He was probably about 100 kilos. So at least 20 kilos on top of me. And he would put all his body weight into my face and body triangle me. Obviously, I was a little bit annoyed with myself getting subbed 5 times by the same thing over and over again. And then about 2 weeks later, I rolled with him again, and I managed to hold him off. And he managed to sub me a few times, but not 5 times, and it wasn't from the same thing. So I took that as a win. By March, I was understanding the sports a lot more. I was training about 2 to 3 times a week, and I also had my good friend training with me and coaching me at the same time. So by about March, I learned my first sweep, and it was working well for me. And the sweep that I got really good at was the scissor sweep. And I was using it on all the white belts, and it just worked. But whenever I roll with a higher belt, it just stopped working. And that's when I realized that learning how to sweep someone is, I wouldn't say useless, but not useful when you're in a lower belt. After learning that, I was focusing on escapes. So I will watch videos on how to escape every single pin. I'll learn how to escape from knee on belly, from mount, from side control, from north-south, from back mount, anything. Obviously, I wasn't great at them, but it was something that I can work from and not just sit there and waiting for them to attack. So in this month, I was actually focusing on side control. How to defend it, where to escape, what are you looking for when you are trying to get out of it. And then for some reason in April, I went back to sweeping again. And then I also got my third stripe. And that's when I was finally allowed to spar. Being able to stay back after class to spar was game changing, to say the least. That's when I was able to actually work on a lot more escapes because it was free rolling. This was when I was able to learn how to escape from knee on belly, from other mounts and other pins. And because I was back onto the sweeping game, I was getting really good at my scissor sweep. And then to complement that, I was working a lot on my spider guard. So by May, it was my 5th month of training jiu-jitsu. I was rolling with a blue belt, and he said something to me that changed everything for me. He said something like, you're doing something wrong if you're using more effort to roll with someone at a lower belt. So that just means that the higher belt you are, you shouldn't be using more and more effort. You should be using less effort. You should be more energy efficient, and you shouldn't be muscling everything. So from that day onwards, I actually started thinking about my rolls very differently. If I was rolling with 3 stripes or lower, I would actually not muscle, and I would try to do things a little bit more effective. I would use a little bit more technique and to pass guard or to sweep or to catch any subs. I would try not to muscle everything. This was when I started thinking about what grip I need and where to apply pressure. Honestly, I was hitting sweeps much easier. I was using a lot less energy, and I was able to pace myself and actually get more rolls in an hour. So this was actually really important for me. I'll be able to do 2 classes back to back and then do a sparring round afterwards. So that would be about 3 hours of training. By June, I was actually enjoying the sport so much that I don't know if there was another word for even more obsessed than obsessed. Like I was addicted. I was making very steady progress, and I was escaping side controls. I wasn't able to sub any blue belt, but I was surviving a lot of the round. And if I was rolling with another white belt, I would catch the occasional triangle or even armbar. And because it was still 2021, COVID was still around. So my training got paused for about 6 months because Sydney was in lockdown. Fast forward all the way to 2021 November. So I started training as soon as possible and it was rough. My cardio was down a drain and all the grip strength that I have been developing for the first 6 months of training all disappeared. All my grip will be burnt by 2 rounds. It took me at least a month to remember everything that I learned. I was just so rusty. Everything that I was trying to retain the last 6 months just wouldn't be stuck in my head. Like I actually had to think about everything. It was just frustrating. All the peers that started training at the same time as I was are all ahead of me. Some people were able to train during lockdown and those who actually managed to train surpassed me by miles. And then at my gym, they started introducing the takedown classes, where you can kind of learn judo throws and some takedowns that can be used in jiu-jitsu but not quite in judo. That's where I learned a lot of grip fighting and how to start from standing. And by December, I was able to shake up a lot of the rust. I was starting to remember almost everything that I was learning for the first 6 months. I was back in the groove, I was back into training more regularly, and then we had Christmas. That interrupted all my training again. I was still able to submit some white belts at the gym, but sweeping for some reason became quite difficult. And so yeah, that was my first year of training jiu-jitsu. Really, it was only about 6 months of training because 1 month of it was trying to get everything back. If you want to know what I did in 2022 in terms of my training, let me know in the comments below and I might just make another video about my progress in 2022. So my second year of training. Otherwise, let me know how your training went for the first year. Did you think you made a lot of progress? Was it what you expected? Was it better? Was it worse? Did you end up training more or less? Anything, whatever it is, just drop it in the comments below and I'll see you in the next video.